It was,
That's how they should be, right?
I've never been on a cruise before. It was, very cool.
Yeah, we're drawing, what is it?
40 Coast Maya
It took
and
us
the ruins.
7:45.
And then you put it out.
We had 6 cars that
And then a
got
submarine
disconnected,
and looked at the reef. That was
and there's nothing
very cool.
that they could have done.
3 feet down, we went to submarine.
So I got a guy that
You don't get most
on
of it?
Thursday.
No, it was, yeah, it was 45 minutes.
Kind of talk to us a little bit.
They take you around and
I've gotten
there's,
different
No, I
answers.
mean, yeah, on the cruise.
Oh, no,
People
no,
have
no.
told me that it's just
you don't even know the
the
shit's moving.
condition of the track,
Oh,
the
it's,
ups and downs.
What do they have? They have like
People
5,000,
tell me
10,000
that it's
people on those
the
trains.
that the knuckles are breaking.
this one I
They're
think
actually
had
breaking
6,000 people on
because
That's crazy.
there's so much weight and those
Yeah,
knuckles
double
are
the
not meant to
population.
be. So
The make one
one
now
of the
is
things I'm gonna
about
run through this guy
13,000.
has been paying.
Yeah. Ours,
Because they
ours.
told me, it's a straight shot. You don't have to worry about it. But if it's train, it's either go down.
I got one meter back there.
Flow.
Yeah, I might need one more.
If you catch it either going up that way,
The
then
last
break.
night,
If you go this way, once it levels off, they'll in against the gap, and it's coming down, so you
there
get
was a storm, and they
Yeah,
told us.
somebody didn't hear
it
about
was rough.
the other place too,
And,
that was supposed to be.
There were a couple times in the middle of the night we kind of thought over there. That was okay.
What floor did y'all stay on, sir? On the ship? What floor?
Your definition.
What down?
On the 6th floor.
I'm gonna be on, in, where y'all,
Yeah, I was looking for
they
you.
got forward or after?
We were almost right in the.
We're gonna get it done. I just,
Where?
I want us to, I want us.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, and there's a problem. If it doesn't
One
happen,
elevator back in there,
then it's on us.
and we were
I'd
not quite
rather
halfway.
get something else that's more permanent.
We're gonna sell the 8th floor and one more path right around the elevator to the rear, I guess. So, we're gonna see my first time ever, I'm buying a Trampoline, every motion sentence. I hope not, but I'm gonna take it just in case.
Listen, I took Germany one time when I took me on the gold fishing.
It's okay.
I slept with gold fishing.
Oh, really?
Trust me.
I'm just afraid to get sick.
No.
I don't have any problem with that, but when my wife got sick, I got sick.
That was,
Watching her
yeah,
get sick, it got to me.
I don't know of anybody on the ship that got any kind of seasickness.
I'm hoping it won't be too bad. We'll see. It's in July, so.
They feed you.
I am.
They feed
There
you
you go.
like crazy.
July, we have fireworks July 4th, and then we sell out July 6th. I return July 10th or 11th, the day of our council meeting. So I get back at 7 a.m. that morning, we'll drive in from Galveston, I'll go home, unpack, shower, and just come back with it.
Cancun and Cozumel.
Cozumel, yeah, just, yeah. I've never been. We're gonna
Have a little bit of fun.
try.
You will eat
All
yourself
right.
sick on the ship.
I've heard, yeah, I heard
They
that.
feed you like crazy.
Do we have that
Wait.
on?
Yes, it's live, it's ready.
Okay. Awesome. All right, just so we can stay on time, Paula, if you can go ahead and show us at 6:32. Let's go on ahead and get started with this meeting. Just so we can follow tradition, if we could all please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so this is an official notice of workshop. City Council and City of Lytle will hold a workshop on April 4th, 2023 at Lytle City Hall, located on 14916 Main Street at 6:30. The purpose of this workshop is to discuss street lights. So, Matt.
So council, at y'all's direction, I looked at several things on street lighting requirements, kind of thing like, and you can see by the packet I sent you, it's from as simple as these are the type of street lights we approved to full blown out policies on it. I took one of the policies that I found that I thought, I figured if we're gonna move forward with street lights, let's do more than just say when we're gonna pay for them and when we're not gonna pay for them. Let's set a policy on these are the type of street lights, in conjunction with our utility provider, of course. But these are the type of street lights. This is when we will pay, when we won't pay. But on top of that, this is how they'll be laid out on city streets if you request them. And if you request them, this is the process to do that request. Because what I was thinking, if, like I told Charles and I live next door to each other, and I want street lights, but Charles does it, and I say, hey, city, I want a street light. And the city says, well, sounds good to me, you have a street light, boom. Then we have the neighbor coming in saying, hey, you ruined my lifestyle. I don't like all that light, you know? So, that's what I kind of did with the policies you see in front of you. I kind of just worked on it the best I could to kind of that scenario, and figured we need to use it as a template to maybe speed things up tonight, or delete it all, add to it, start from scratch, whatever. Then once we kind of get a working copy, I can send it like to CPS Energy and get comments from them on best to move forward. If y'all say, hey, we're looking for a certain kind of light, we want to make sure it does this, then I can make those notes, work with CPS on it and AEP on the southern end of our town.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had written down on here, so thank you for mentioning that about sending it to CPS just because of the details.
Yeah, they will assist as part of our contract with CPS. They will assist in the lighting survey process and all that good stuff, engineering and all that. But I figure before we get to that level of calling in people that cost money, you know, we can maybe set a person I named like myself in the public works director, go out and look at it and say, hey, you know, there's already streetlights here. It already meets the policy. Thank you. You know, we're gonna have to move on. Or no, it doesn't meet the policy. Let's take it back to council and give approval to move to the next phase, which is bringing in engineers from the power companies and saying, hey, let's design this. How does this work?
Awesome. All right. Council, just want to go down, start from the very top, go through this.
Yeah.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah, my thought there is that we just read through it out loud, and then we can, we all take a paragraph or something, and then some comments, we say them in, and go from there.
So initial question, we currently do not have inspections or requirements for city lights.
In all my years working here, I can tell you the history to get a street light is a resident comes in and say, I want a street light in front of my house.
Right.
And we say, oh, council decides yes or no.
There's a bulb there to put in.
If there's not a pole, CPS is put a pole. All we do is call, council says yes, put a street light in. The staff calls CPS, says we want a street light at 1, 2, 3, 4 Main Street. It goes up, we start getting the bill.
I just add, some of them we already knew, so
Yeah.
we kind of went that way, but there were some that we actually had help from the city employees to go out and take a look after hours, you know?
Yeah, so what, I think we will, so if somebody came in today and said, Matt, I want a street light in front of my house. I would go out there and look at it and say, okay, there's already one, you know, a house away or 2 houses down, we don't need to have. But that's something we would come back and report to council. There's no formal policy that said, hey, this qualifies for a new street light or an
This
upgrade.
type of material and so forth.
Yeah,
And then as part going forward, the inspector, that would be super skip, or are we gonna have to have some kind of entity inside the
to
city?
do the inspections on what, again, like the,
Well, because it mentioned, well, I don't think it mentions on this call, on this draft, but the initial draft, it said you have to get the permit, you have to get an inspection. And then once all that's passed, then you're given, I guess, the final permit for the streetlights.
so it's not really a permit that would get issued, it would just be the authorization. We would bring it back to council, council would authorize us to have streetlights installed and we will pay for them. But it's more of a,
Well,
we
I'm
would
talking about HOA.
oh, an HOA, yes. So yeah, that would be part of the review process with our engineers and internally with us. But we're gonna, anything streetlight related is gonna fall back on the utility company for that jurisdiction. So like the ones we have now, CPS Energy. What they typically do, I can tell you from experience dealing with one of them, they would go to CPS and say, we want streetlights in our subdivision in these locations. CPS contracts with an engineering firm to design it, and then comes back to the engineer for this project. And the one I'm talking about, they have to be the exact same engineer, which is intriguing.
So we're gonna come up with an ordinance, or, cut you off.
No, it's okay.
If we're gonna come up with an ordinance, then we need to have some type of internal inspection. Something that says the city approves. I can understand having CPS do the approval of it, maybe the city goes back off, off of that.
And that can fall back under our city engineers then. When that process, when the plans come in, because they'll come in as a full set of plans and which street line and all that, and that's just part of the process and the review process by our city engineers.
One of the things I was looking at, I might be going ahead, in your document, we talk about HOA, but what if we have a subdivision that wants to become an HOA? So now you have an organization that they're gonna develop within that subdivision or that part of the city. Let's say mobile home park, and then all of a sudden they want to have an HOA. So it would seem to me beneficial that if we had some kind of inspection or some kind of, well, obviously the ordinance will be the documentation, right? But we still would need to have some kind of permit, some kind of inspection that says, okay, if you're gonna become an HOA, your city lights have to meet this specification.
If we say we want to have streetlights, period. If we say when you build, you have to have streetlights. Or we say if you build, you can choose whether you want streetlights or don't want streetlights. If you do, this is the policy you have to
Then they have
follow.
to follow.
And if you have streetlights currently, you decide in this geographic area and you're gonna become an HOA, understand that when you do that, we're gonna transfer that monthly cost now to the HOA for the electricity.
Okay, well, let's move forward, and I know in here, there's a place that we could put stuff.
Yep, and I actually have a place in there for us to discuss
You
that.
thought of that?
There you go.
So let's go ahead and move down the road. So Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'll start off, purpose, or policy purpose. The purposes of this statement is to adopt an official policy for the city of Lidle pertaining to the installation of streetlights for the purposes of traffic safety and crime control. Okay, feel free to stop me anytime, gentlemen. Coverage, the policy upon adoption shall apply to all public rights of way within the municipal limits of the city of Lidle and any public rights of way annexed in the future until such time the policy statement is altered, modified, or rescinded by the city council. Policy of the city council, or the council of the city of Lidle hereby establishes the following policy. A, the owner, developer, or subdivider may be required to install street lighting via above ground or underground contribution along all proposed streets, along all existing streets which adjoin the property in accordance with this policy.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it says may be required to install street lighting. But change that to is, the owner, developer, or subdivider is required to install street lighting via underground contribution.
Yeah, because I was
So-
wondering about that too.
Okay, so I did change that. So this policy did say shall, and I like the word, talking on policy, I'll use shall, which means you have to. Shall be required to install street lighting via underground contribution. I wasn't sure how we felt about that, so I added both, but yeah.
I just was, before I walked in here tonight, I saw an email from CPS talking about the bad weather coming in. They talking about, of course, above ground electrical stuff and how it's prone to be damaged. I mean, as we transition to make improvements around the city, in a perfect world, all of our electrical stuff would be underground, in my opinion, because it prevents us from suffering power outages.
All right, and it's more sightly too for people when they come in. I mean, if you drive down Main Street, got telephone poles all over it.
It's a big selling point. We listen on the radio as well as developments are happening over there, Bernie, out in Hill Country. One of the big selling points is all underground utilities, everything.
Yeah, it makes it for a safe family environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me back up before we get too far.
Can you speak through your microphone? Then we're talking.
Okay. And the very first paragraph in policy, purpose is traffic safety and crime control. I'd like to see public safety, too. Public safety, traffic safety, and crime control. Because people will feel safe walking around their lights. And it has not to do necessarily with traffic, lights, cars.
You ready to move on? Okay, under B. Question? Okay. Through development plan approval process, the city council may approve street lighting which exceeds the standard city requirements for residential streets so as to reduce the length of sag vertical curves provided the street lights are operational prior to the issuance of certificates of occupancy on such streets. In any case, the minimum allowable length of sag vertical curve shall be as follows, and it talks about I'll be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about on that curve. I don't know if that means the curvature of the road or the curvature of the line, if it's above ground. I would think not, only because this policy talked about all underground utilities. So that was a question I would have for the engineer to maybe explain that further to me, unless one of y'all has insight on that. I did a bunch of research on
Sag
it.
vertical curve, is that what the question is?
Yeah, and it talked, I
What
couldn't
is
find.
the sag curve?
Yeah.
It talked about, I found stuff on street curvature, lighting with street curve, I don't,
Yeah. That's my question, what is that? What is a sag vertical curve?
Yeah, if you could
figure out.
Identify what that is.
I'll outline it.
Just that it's needed. It looks good, you can add it, if not, if that's not essential.
Like I said, that's gotta be, I'm not 100% sure that's with the wire, only because this policy originally talked about all underground.
Yeah.
So that's why I tend to believe it might be,
What's the definition?
sure,
Yeah, there you go.
Sag vertical curves are curves that connect descending grades forming a bowl or a sag. Designing them is very similar to design of, anyhow, there's some diagram. So it would be probably the curve of the road.
okay.
And if there's some kind of a grade going down. And, so, yeah, it's not the droop in the line.
I didn't think so, only because it talked about all under, I thought it was the curvature of the street.
Yeah, the Army has it in here, the headlight sight distance is the basis for determining the length of sag vertical curves. So, that's a question for the engineers.
I'll get clarification on that and then send that out to everyone, so we can adjust that if it's needed.
Okay.
So moving on to C, and that's gonna change, we'll change that to underground. Yes, sir.
B is, that may be moved to where we talk about the distance between poles and so forth. That paragraph. It seems
Okay.
like it's more in tune with the placement of the actual.
Of the poles, okay. I'll see how I'll talk to the engineer, and we'll see how it falls best, because they're sitting in this document, you have to make corrections and work with them, and say, hey, how can we best make sure this makes sense? I just took what they had. So all underground electrical distribution systems for street lighting within the corporate limits of the city of Lytle and its ETJ, or extraterritorial planning jurisdiction, shall be installed according to the following standards. That would again change to underground. Underground service for lighting fixtures shall be installed by the developer in conformance with the utility company and city of Lytle standards at the developer's expense. The placement of street lighting fixtures on residential streets shall be at 300 to 600 foot intervals, unless A, the roadway is less than 400 feet, but more than 200 feet, in which case a street light will be provided at the end of the street. Or B, where the roadway length is less than 200 feet and the street light is placed at the intersection and no natural features create a problem, no street light will be placed at the end of the roadway. Or C, the vertical and horizontal street alignment or natural features necessitate shorter spacing intervals.
And that's where I think the SAC comes in. B should be in there something.
They should be in there. Okay. I'll see if we can move it.
But I don't think that we have a lot of roadways where that's, I mean, it's not like hilly terrain or anything
Yeah.
like that.
That was my thought as I read that. It shows a picture of a car going down like a mountain road with a curve
Mhm.
and going down the hill. And because of that, you're gonna have dead spots in your lighting. So that's what I'm sure that's
Yeah.
referring to. Can we back up before your back up to number one? Above ground or underground service for light fixtures. Okay, so this is for any street anywhere in the city limits. On all new developments, we're going to require them to go underground.
Yeah.
But if out on Wisdom Road right now, somebody says we really need a street light, and we agree to do a street light, if we make this number one only underground, then that light has to go underground. The wiring to that light has to go underground.
Unless they have electrical utility lights. above.
No, you see what I'm saying?
No, I agree.
We only have all above ground over there, we just want to pop one pole down, and if we don't have, we need to change the wording.
Okay.
All new developments has to be underground, somewhere we need to put that in. On streets with existing above ground, additional lights may have above or below ground wiring to conform with what's in the area, something like that.
But how about with this, so already poles with lights on it, and you got a pole that's not lit, doesn't have a light on it. You still have to go underground for that one?
No, that's what he's talking about. We would allow above ground in that situation.
Yeah.
So new developments be all underground, existing where it's only one or two, because if somebody came in on Wisdom Road and it's all above ground, and they say, hey, we're gonna plop in 20 new homes back here on this acreage, that's a new development, to me, that you have to bring your power in, and that all has to be
Absolutely.
underground.
So new development, but if it's just along Wisdom Road,
Okay.
and
Existing.
somebody says that's, that's really a dark spot, let's put a light right there. And if we approve it, if we don't change that, we're gonna force ourselves
I will, yes,
to do the expense of going underground on one pole.
the past being Jerry's home, we go out, and look at all the poles.
Yeah.
And there was a pole that didn't have a light on it, it was kind of dark, we would press it, like,
So, but the good thing is under this policy, it wouldn't just be if that pole didn't, it would be based on spacing now, not just does that pole have a light or not.
So, I'm thinking right now what everybody's saying, so at the same time, I'm trying to remember the stuff that is in our subdivision. Our subdivision already, guidelines already specify it has to be on the ground, right? For any kind of new development,
I have to go back and look at that, and I'll ask the engineer. I'll have to look at that.
I'm just saying, this is just a policy for the light. So if we already have something in place that new developers have to follow in our subdivision guidelines already, that's already gonna dictate that it needs to be underground. To me, when I read this is giving us some flexibility in a sense of addressing the street lighting based on the conformity that it's supposed to follow. See what I'm saying? So I do want to put in there about for us to go ahead and consider going underground, already, definitely. But if it's already in our subdivisions, the policy is more just for us to be able to give us coverage, whether it's above ground, whether it's a new or an old, thing in there. So look at our subdivision.
I got you.
If it says underground, hey, we already know that it's going to have to be underground. So
And there's many cases in the original document that said to be under review by the city council.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. At any time, the city council can trump it, so no, we'll allow outlet or we won't.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to have them go underground, like David said.
Yes.
If one line or two lines.
I think, at some point there, it talks about too, about going in and making improvements to the road, right? As far as, hey, we're redoing a road.
Yep.
And just kind of reinforcing that it's kind of like a catch-all that, yeah, it's in the subdivision, but what if something falls outside of that and still have it underground? And transition to that, it might take 50 years before all of our electrical is buried, but at least we're kind of raising the bar.
Yeah, if somebody
The
comes in,
aesthetics.
says, hey, we're redoing this entire road for whatever, okay, great, you're gonna redo it, but now when you upgrade that road, you have to conform with your street lighting with this, and you have to bring the power underground for it.
Sure.
Okay.
We need to figure out somehow to put the wording in there to make that clear to anybody who wants to come in and do major work on a road.
Good news is most of the roads are ice, so.
Now, how much pushback is the state going to give us if we're requiring that? Like, I don't know how much lighting's on 2790 on the other side of the railroad tracks. I don't think that there's, that they would not be conforming to this streetlight policy. With the way that the lighting currently is.
and that's something I wrote down for later.
We're gonna have to work with that. I mean, I would imagine it's not totally uncommon, because I drive all over Texas, and these bigger streets and cities, have everything underground already.
Well, I mean, we're seeing it now, right? And all the work they're doing around here is that they're burying stuff, right? And they're also putting lights at intersections too. And of course, that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I imagine at some point in the future that they're going to expand 2790 between here and the cost.
I would think so. Apparently, there's already a subdivision coming in.
Yeah, there's one right there coming into the cost for
Yeah,
Violet.
that's a big curve.
Yeah.
So it's that all that land between here and Lacoste is probably getting.
I would see that all residential before too long, for sure.
And strip mall.
Okay. So do we leave off on 2B, correct? Where the roadway length is less than 200 feet and a street light is placed at the intersection and no natural features create a problem, no street light will be placed at the end of the roadway. Or C, the vertical and horizontal street alignment or natural features necessitate shorter spacing intervals. 3, the placement of street lighting along non-residential streets shall be in accordance with the latest versions of the Illuminating Engineering Society's American National Standard for Roadway Lighting. A street light shall be provided at all street intersections.
And this is where I also wrote the question about talking to TxDOT because of 2790 and the view. We do have some intersections that are on, it's inside the city limits, but it's their road, so.
And like I said, this would be a new policy. I don't think we're going to go back and say, oh yeah, by the way, all of y'all are out of, my thought, all of y'all are out of conformance, bring it up to conformance, right? Bring it up now. It would be, text dot coming in and saying, we're gonna redesign 2790. Oh yeah, by the way, when you do streetlights, guess what? We have this now, let's talk. We wouldn't go back and say, oh yeah, fix all your streetlights.
Yeah, I think they're headed in that direction though. Everything I see around the state, that's what the design standards that they're implementing. You know, for,
I can tell you in talking in the meeting with all the different, everybody had utilities on the sidewalk area, that project over there. They pretty much told everybody, we want to keep, the state is telling everybody, we want to keep utilities all the way to the edge of our easements. That way we have everything between the road. And they're offering, grants to move utilities out of their easements on other properties too, so. Under D, the standard street lighting fixture shall be LED and conform with the following. That's what I wasn't 100% sure on, because they talk about fiberglass poles.
This is CPS.
Yeah, I think that's where we have to work with the actual utility provider. I can get some feedback from them. I told them to hold off giving me any feedback until we got at least a better working document. I can send to CPS and AEP, our contacts there, and explain to them when we want our street lights, we don't want street lights that are just flooding light all over the place. We want it more geared to come down to the road, provided just for the safety of the road, not cause light pollution. And explain to us what kind of street lights those are. The wattage I changed over to what San Antonio is currently using that they sent me, but I mean, even San Antonio's wasn't very, just talks about how many watts you're allowed to have.
The issue of LED is probably going to be overridden by Biden. He's doing away with all incandescent, mercury vapor, all that stuff. Everything's going LED.
I can tell you both utility providers here, if you have to replace a fixture because it failed, it's getting replaced with an LED.
Yeah.
They're not going any other direction.
Anybody,
So that's good news.
it's more energy efficient anyway.
Exactly, yeah,
Sure.
that would help cut costs.
But yeah, I would say that's something to include as far in D about that. I don't know what you call it, shielding, because even those
Yeah, light
new
focus.
that light focused on the street rather than creating that light pollution. I feel like that's a big thing people won't even realize, is especially trying to appreciate the night sky, having that light pollution really.
And we saw that briefly some there whenever we sat through the meeting with CPS for the 20 or the main street running south of town, lighting that up on the new design of lights and how, we talked about just moving one pole up from the middle of the guy's driveway just a couple of feet, how that was going to cause a little bit of a dark spot right here because how the lights are now designed, just shoot straight down. But I want to make sure we stay on that and don't give them any options.
I think some of that's like, it kind of like fans out almost, and it casts whatever 45-degree angle off of it, as opposed to 45 and 45 up sort of deal.
You see some of the older ones in this shoot, I mean, it's almost like light 360 almost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
We want to keep that. And then, do y'all have any thoughts on, they make different variant, like a warm color, right? I mean, do y'all have any thoughts? I don't know. I'm just.
well,
ask them out there.
there's a bunch of, they're like the old lights. And then they put this one LED light and that one's really, really bright.
Well, they're able to light up more area with a smaller fixture, so that's why they go to those. But like when you buy a light bulb, you buy the soft white or the whatever tone. I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on that. I don't know what they make it on.
Have you seen anything on luminous, on the values that they require?
No, and that might be a CPS.
I would talk to CPS and see what they're doing and what they recommend, because I would hate for us to put a certain color and our main provider doesn't support it.
So when I reach out, I'll say, hey, can y'all send me some options, photographs, kind of what they look like at night or something?
Because the one that we have in front of our house, we just recently received that from the city. And it's real nice. It's a nice bright white. It's
Like
I
a
would imagine
daylight.
the luminous is probably real
Like a
nice.
daylight.
I read an article this week online about blue lights. And they did some study with blue lights, and blue street lights reduce crime.
What about the red ones?
Yeah.
Can we get ones where we can adjust,
Certain-
depending?
Yeah, it's kind of what
Season.
area you're in.
Yeah, it depends on what area you're in.
I think, yeah, you look at the studies on that, like a cool light or a warm light, right? It's kind of like, it looks blue or it looks orange sort of deal, or brighter. I mean, you look at the lights in here, right? That light over there is warm. This one's blue. I think just having, uniform, appearance of them will probably look better as opposed to, hey, one orange, one blue.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully I'm meeting with CPS for the next week or two.
Ask them
over
about-
I wanna
over our lighting in here.
Ask them about the blue light.
I want to say all of them are blue though. All the new ones are blue.
So this kind of goes in the same section. I don't know what city it was I was looking at, but they have programmable, they have dimmer. So like for instance, that after a certain time at night, they'll actually dim down. I mean, there's just so many variations.
I think the ones, Matt, that they're installing going towards Pullman, I think that's what CPS was talking about. Didn't they say that?
Did the-
They said that they had a dim capability
Don't know. I don't remember that, but
in the sense of the illumination.
Yeah, and you
I'll
can
ask.
change the intensity of the light as well during certain times.
But it goes based on the sensor that goes on
Right.
it. That's what they're saying. So the sensor picks up when it starts getting darker, and little by little it actually increases.
But you can change the luminance to the color of the light as well. I mean, that could go here. I don't know how deep.
I would
you wanna get
imagine
into
That's
it.
probably extra money.
yeah, I would imagine that fixture is probably a little more costly. I know in just buying, like we buy the light bars for the top of police cars, you can buy them with the sensor, so at night they automatically are a little dimmer versus so bright. And of course, that's an upcharge if you want that feature kind of thing.
So remember, not a few months ago, we were talking about how Bear County is starting to do these new policies that, and start doing restrictions, energy saving and everything. Might be something we might want to look at now. That way we have that capability in the future. Once it does come down to us saying, well, the city now needs to control how much luminous they're putting out, how often they have their streets lit. And instead of getting that added cost, if it's not that much more to include that early on, we might need to look at that.
I'll talk
The
to
the other thing too, when on the letter that you and the mayor got, they list what 4 bullets there with the 100, 200, and 400 watt on different areas. Y'all don't want to incorporate that into this? Because this is kind of where you're putting that. You're putting the 100 watt.
Well, we want to get with the latest and greatest that CPS has, right?
So with that letter that they sent you,
This is
Your
what,
cover
yeah, this
letter?
is what San Antonio is using per CPS. That's what they're,
but you know which letter I'm talking about, the cover letter on the original attachment you put out.
That's
It
the
had
one that goes
100 watts. Yes, sir.
yeah.
Yep.
So that, what that is, San Antonio requires 100-watt installations at every residential street intersection, 100-watt at every 300 to 600 foot for residential mid-blocks, and then 250-watt at all major thoroughfare intersections on photometric study recommendations. Typical spacing between each of these streets is approximately 170 feet, and then 400-watt installation are only on expressways. Placement is permitted by textile.
Which would be textile. So I didn't know if you wanted to put that here, because on number 2, you're kind of giving, 4 different values.
we can do that. We can
Values
take-
there.
If y'all want, I can take those 4 bullet points and plug them in.
That would be
Okay.
my suggestion. I don't know what everybody else would think, but it's, on number 2, it's kind of leaving it open. And I know this is a rough draft. I realize that. But that might be a good place to put that in.
What's the existing height of our current lights throughout the city? I know, talking about,
I have to go out and measure them.
is it the standard or is it just
It's
like,
probably as standard as we're gonna get from CPA, whatever length of pole they give us, but in variation, if they buried it 5 feet versus 6 feet that day, maybe, I don't know.
and I guess, I don't know if we need to put it in there or not, because this is talking about like new stuff, right?
Mhm.
What happens, old telephone pole, right, rots out, we gotta replace that, are we gonna, in its place, put the gray fiberglass pole?
So I wasn't sure how we wanted to move forward on the poles. I think CPS, their standard is all the wooden poles. I haven't seen them do anything outside of that until they get into the larger electrical lines when they go to the metal stuff. But I can ask CPS and AEP pole options, where they're, what do they have? I know out in Saddle Ridge, I think they have metal, the gray
Yeah,
metal
metal.
poles. They're a little smaller poles, so they don't, that wooden pole's this big around, whereas that gray metal pole is more like this, so it's a little more sightly when you drive by. So we can look at that in residential streets. But if you gotta get up higher, they may need to go with that wooden
So
pole.
do you know what guidelines Saddle Ridge used?
Whatever that engineer drew up at the time.
Because I It seems like they are a good
If
example
we
of
like
how
that,
we
we
should.
should, yeah.
'Cause, yeah, I drove by there last night and it's at each corner, right? And it does light up quite a
Yeah, because at the
bit. It's
intersection,
real
the
nice.
length of the streets are as long.
And they are those poles, the metal poles.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's composite, but it looked metal to me. Maybe if you can find out what their height is and why they came up with that height, and if it meets the documents you submitted, then maybe we should just, out of a standard rules, just
Well,
have say that they should at least meet
They've
this
already done the
requirement.
engineering.
if we
Yeah.
were going back to that American National Standard for roadway lighting, I mean,
Maybe follow
That may be where it
I
fell
I
under.
imagine that has something to,
Yeah.
the recommendations in there.
And then they have several different recommendations, but, that engineer, and the good news is the engineer that designed Saddle Ridge is the main one, or I'm sorry, according to the only one that does all the stuff for CPS. So that's why it works a lot easier. It's weird, he says, we design it, we send it to CPS, they rubber stamp it, send it back to us to design it again on their behalf, send it back, and then they send it back to us, say it's perfect. It's a really weird process. So,
That's-
but yeah, that's good, we can reach out to them and get that from them.
The new stuff is the easy stuff.
Yeah.
It's all these hodgepodge of poles and whatnot, like, all right,
I would love to work on, it might be off topic, but they got streetlights on all the poles down there. How do we
That'd be nice.
figure out we don't have 50 poles? We have a half broken pole attached to a regular pole to keep it, a lot of that that's going to come in is coordinating between the utility provider and the internet phone provider. Because one may be their pole, the other one's this. But yeah.
Well, with TechStop coming in with the sidewalks, I mean, now's a good time to look at all that.
At least on a certain area, maybe it will. So I can tell you on the other project, when TechStat does this, they'll come in, we'll have meetings with everybody that has utilities along that road. And if
Standardize.
it's not conforming or it's in their way, have to be relocated. And that may be something I'll talk with our contact with CPS and say, how do we fix this?
that might be the time if we're going in there and we're able to get that, to include that and get rid of the poles on Main Street. Because it is unsightly. In my opinion, it's unsightly. You look down there and you got 50 poles.
And I thought about, when we go to Tennessee to my family's up there, Christmas on the poles that they have every so often, like they got the little signs that hang up there, Merry Christmas, welcome to this town. It looks really nice. I thought about doing that here. And there's a process to do it, but Jesus Christ, we got a pole every 30 inches, So,
I think if I use taller poles, it will be on Main Street, because it puts out more light
but yeah.
compared to a subdivision.
And they're helpful. So yeah, when they do it on a state road like that, a main road, so our engineers will look at it, but I'm gonna use CPS because most of our cities, but CPS or AP, they'll look at it and their engineers will design it because they have to meet a certain standard. I'm assuming it goes back to that American National Safety Standard. They have to meet that minimum, because I know talking to them before, they had to meet that minimum. If they couldn't meet that, we couldn't even move forward with the project.
Talking about the beautification of downtown, is it an option to have different lighting standards for different districts? I don't know if we have a downtown district, zoned that way sort of deal.
I know we do have, when the beautification committee came in, we got a geographic boundary that set our downtown.
Mhm.
And it ran from, don't swear me 100% to this, but I believe where the creek crossing is on Main Street, where they're working on the leak now. And it ran south to, I think, Prairie, and then I think one block, either, so over to Adams and Oak Street. And that became the official downtown for Lytle, and then they were able to apply for grants for the beautification of downtown Lytle.
I mean, I just know that other cities that have a designated downtown district, they kind of have different design
A different
standards
standard for that.
for whatever, architecture, for lighting, all that sort of deal. I mean, is that something that we want to try to incorporate now in this policy moving forward too?
If y'all
Because-
want to, we can, because that, I can find that geographic, I've seen it before, I'll have to do some reading, but I can find that, and, we got, anything in this downtown area, we got to meet these standards for lighting, and that would be, a lot of it's gonna be commercial, because there's just a couple residences in there.
And that's what I was gonna say, a lot of it, we would probably have majority of control over that, just because of where it's at.
A lot of it's just commercial, so as, if X sells out and the new commercial people come in, they're redesigning, well, good, now you gotta fix this, lighting to match. And then we just knock them off one by one, but it's so small, we could probably work with CPS and say, hey, we wanna change this.
I guess my thought more is running into problems with TxDOT because 132s.
Yeah,
is
they may say,
theirs.
hey, no, you gotta, if you're gonna do street lighting on a state road, you gotta meet this standard.
Yeah, even then, it's what, three city blocks, 4 city blocks. I don't know. It's something, a question to, bring up when you talk to them.
But it's a good start. Definitely a good start.
Okay, authorization for streetlight installation shall occur at such time as a developer through the city of Lidle requests the installation of streetlights prior to the issuance of any certificates of occupancy. If the development has an HOA, the HOA shall incur a monthly electrical expense billed from the utility company for each streetlight installed. A certificate of occupancy is issued in the immediate area of the proposed streetlight location. Or 3, a street is constructed or widened as part of development. Streets that are constructed or widened by the city of Lidle shall be lighted immediately after construction, dependent on the availability of funds. The city may acquire any additional easements necessary to support street lighting projects requested by the city. Any questions on that one?
That last paragraph was what I was talking about earlier, about the modifications being made to streets. So I think that sounds pretty all encompassing to me, unless you add anything else to it.
I'll move on to F. Street lighting facilities and street lights shall be installed by the developer on any street, portion of street, or widening prior to the city of Lidle's acceptance of the street for total maintenance unless otherwise approved by the city council. Residents along a street may request the relocation of a street light provided the proposed street light location meets the city standards and the relocation is approved by the city council. A petition shall be signed, I think it needs to say. A petition signed by all persons within the area of influence is required for the relocation of street lighting and shall include information on the specific location and associated construction impact. I had just read, the city administrator and public works director shall determine the area of influence on a case-by-case basis and provide the required petition for the residents to complete. Relocation costs and all facilities of abandonment costs must be paid in full to the utility company in advance by the residents requesting the relocation. So the way I see that is residents come in and say, we want to light up all this road. The city says, great, we've got the funding, we can do that, or we don't. How do y'all want to work on the cost is X? I don't know how we move forward with that. But I figure that gives me out. Right? Hey, we agree you need street lighting. Unfortunately, the cost isn't there for us. We'll budget for next year. But if you want them now, y'all get paid for it. It is, X.
You're still asking him, so I have something to add at the very end, just because of some of the other paragraphs, but we talk about the petition, right? We have to go ahead and do that. So I noticed that on H and I, in the very end, we have the statement where it says, after the petition is completed and approved by the city council, city process and request may pay all associated with all costs associated with street light installation. We add that to the bottom of G2.
That's right.
That way they're all the same. If all of them mention about the petition.
I thought the petition would be a good idea, just so we get the buy-in from everybody. If we go out, we look at it and say, hey, you want to light up this area, it really needs to encompass all this. Here's a petition, you need to go out and do the legwork if you want street lights, make sure all your neighbors want it.
Well, okay, so H and I, they talk about petition signed by at least 70%. G, it just says signed by all. Do we want to require that H and I is all
Oh, yeah.
as well, as opposed to?
Or move G to 70%
Yeah,
as
good
well.
call. Yeah,
Well, I mean, because I guess the thing is this: if my neighbors say whatever, I'm an old cranky man. I'm on my way to being an old cranky man, and they all want to get lights, but I don't, right? So you're gonna have one ticked off resident, or you're gonna have 3 ticked off residents and 7 happy people. I mean, Is there a medium ground where, hey, is it realistic to get everybody on board for?
We found that is not on projects the city said we're gonna go do, and everybody has to. But I agree, if we got, and we're not gonna do the 51, we're gonna do a majority, which 70%, I would say.
Just add it.
Okay, we can add that. with
70% of G or?
Yeah, in other words, make them all match.
Yeah, okay. 70%.
Yeah, I just didn't know if we wanted to do sign by all or sign by 7.
I like 70 idea, because like I say,
70.
you get some curmudgeon in there,
Yeah.
and he can shut everything down.
Well, okay, just, you talk about the area, right? The city administrator and public works director shall determine the area of influence on a case by case. And I guess if we're looking at a city street, what are you envisioning in that, like a case by case thing? Are we talking about 3 houses on one side?
I would think then we revert back to what's the spacing kind of thing. It says, hey, this street is 6. So if you want a street light here, and we're gonna say it's 100 watts every 300 to 600 feet from residential streets, or mid-block, then we go to there, this one is it's so many feet that way, so many feet that way, and that's your area of influence right there. But if you want one, and the mayor wants one, and y'all are all spaced out evenly, then we gotta extend that further out, and it encompasses everything.
It's just like almost line of sight sort of deal, right? If I look out my door and I can see the street light, whatever, 3 houses down, I feel like there should be some criteria for, like, I can't be upset at a street light I can't see from my own property. Sort of.
Yeah.
You know, that's my thought on it, because
And I thought that's why I figured we just go back to, how it falls here, depending on where, the spacing, and that becomes our area of influence. And if the guy says, you know what, I don't agree with that, I'm not signing.
And that's what you did on
Unfortunately,
the
you're
second.
not in the area of influence, so when we got the petition back, and that address is within that area of influence. and
That's on the second page. That's what you did with the interviews. Or with the intervals, I'm sorry, placement of 3 lights on residential.
Oh, yeah.
So you're already identifying, so it's basically just what the compliance.
And natural features and trees and such too come into play, because maybe somebody wants an extra street light because that big old oak tree blocks the light on the next house.
So the first paragraph is just, hey, we want to relocate it. And then the second paragraph, the H, is basically asking for an additional one.
Yeah, they want more than what's already
It's
installed,
already,
and then that's what we come out and
And
we
I'm
can say.
thinking back to Bloom Drive, there were some big trees that just hang over the road.
And some of those, like, for instance, I use where I live, there's a street light 4 houses down from me, but you'd never know it because the oak tree is so overgrown over it, you couldn't see it. But if the power company or that homeowner just come out and trim that street, it would light up that street again so well.
I want to say it was a year ago, we had somebody come in here and ask for a street light, and we went out there and they trimmed it, it was there.
Yeah, it was there,
The trees were grown over.
well, you can talk about Bloom Drive, of course. It's an older neighborhood, and you look at some of these new developments, they don't have those, in 30, 40 years, they don't have, they'll have the trees like that, but they're going to be entirely different. They'll be able to see the street light out at Saddle Ridge, 4 blocks away. So I guess in the proximity of those street lights, that's going to be your problem. I'm not going to deal with that.
That zone of influence, whatever you call it, is going to be case by case.
Annexation. So the third paragraph is on annexation then.
That H, when you talk about I, sir.
Yeah. We had the relocation, the additional on this one is in case somebody gets annexed.
Kind of all the same, it's just the different options that are there.
So,
Did y'all want me to read those, or are we okay moving forward?
I'm not, I mean,
So the question that I have was, do we need to include an area that is currently not under any kind of government, like HOA, governing body, but becomes an HOA? I don't know if that's
So-
possible.
so let's go to J, because this is where I wrote down some comments. It might lead to exactly what you're talking about. So this says the city will not pay for any costs associated with lighting of private streets or drives. But on there, I wrote down, how does it work with gated communities, subdivisions that might or might not have an HOA in there.
Right.
We have like Park Place, right?
So,
Stuff
well,
like that.
okay, so
That's-
Park Place is actually a legally gated community. Those are public streets, and you cannot, by state statute, block a public street. They can keep their gate if they wanted to and say these are private streets, we're gonna take on the cost of maintenance of them, and then we're done. Whatever y'all wanna do in there is your business, we're not paying for streetlights, we're not doing anything other than come in and repair our utilities in there. Where the opposite is the trailer park. Everything's wide open, if you drove down it, you would assume they're all public streets, but they're not, they're private streets. So anything that occurs in there is back on to the developer, and that would be private, but they would still have to conform to our standard for street lighting. It's just understand that we're not paying any of those costs. It's no different than kind of an HOA.
I think this council has already made a decision on the lighting on a gated community. I think they've come to this council before and asked for lights, so we've said no.
They might have, I don't know.
Where, that was Park Place? Yeah,
That's the only one we've got.
so it's if you go back through our agendas, it's there, and they've come numerous times. Well, not numerous, but I know in my time it's been at least twice. And I know that even before that, they came to the council and asked, and
I think Park Place, and off the top of my head though, I think Park Place has the nicer metal poles, because their utilities are underground, if I recall. They've got the nicer metal poles, they're shorter streets, so they would probably only have the lights at the intersections anyways.
it was a
I'd
back,
have to check
it was a
that.
back section that they would come and ask. So, but it was because of the gated community that was brought up, whether or not. So I'm just
Somebody
saying,
might have said no,
we
they
need
thought it was
we need to
private.
address, just like Michael's saying, in an area in there, we need to go ahead and address that of what we would be consider acceptable for us to take responsibility, and those things that we would not.
So I think, in my opinion, and once we're done with this, of course, legal will fix it for us, but in my opinion, we're identifying when we won't pay. Everything else is assumed we will pay if we approve.
Right.
So
But
we're
under
saying
those-
we won't pay for anything private or driveways, anything like that, and we're not gonna pay for anything that has an HOA.
Right, so now that gated community becomes its own entity, wants to do the streetlights, the addition of the streetlights, they should fall under this policy.
They fall under this policy, and they,
So
I don't know if they
that's
got
what I
an
was
HOA up there or
saying,
not. They may actually have an HOA.
They do have an HOA.
but
So
that's what I
they
was
would
getting
have-
at. It should be worded in here somewhere is that the development of an HOA or development of some kind of entity that governs,
So if they decide to move forward and.
then they will
If it-
become,
If that area wasn't an HOA and you decided to form one,
Yes.
great, now you fall under this, and like I said before, if you had streetlights that we paid for before, thank you for developing your HOA, we're not gonna transfer those into your name and you're required to pay those.
along with electricity.
New development around existing.
So that's a perfect area to kind of lead into, because then in K, you start talking about the HOAs. So somewhere in there.
Under the, K, a development or homeowner association may request upgraded street lighting with the new development, within a new development, provided the street light fixture types and locations must be approved by the city of Lidle. The developer and or HOA shall be responsible for all installation costs and monthly operating costs associated with the upgraded street lighting. The developer and or HOA shall be responsible for all costs associated with deletion or upgrade streetlights and any costs associated with the installation of the city's standard streetlights prior to the expiration of the contract with the utility company. And then 4, the developer shall include all responsibilities of the HOA pertaining to the upgraded streetlights in the development conveyance. The developer shall inform all purchasers of property in the development of the same responsibilities. 5, upgraded streetlights shall not be used on thoroughfares. 6, the developers of private streets shall be required to install private street lighting in accordance with this policy, with the exception that the HOA will not have the option of deleting the private street lighting at any time in the future. Anything in there?
How can we enforce that on private streets?
I don't know. That may be something legal tells us, hey,
That you're gonna have to
can't
take
do
that
that,
out?
yeah.
Because, private street, how do you enforce it?
Private property kind of
How do
thing.
you tell them, how do you tell them how to, what if they wanna put nicer streets, or streetlights? I don't know. I don't know the answer, if that's a question to bring up.
Then L, an HOA may request to upgrade their existing standard street light system, provided the HOA requests an upgraded street lighting plan from the utility company. The city reviews the upgraded street lighting plan to ensure it meets city standards. The HOA may request additional street lighting At their expense, the HOA pays all costs associated with the removal of existing street lighting and installation of the upgraded street light systems. And 5, the HOA pays the utility company the monthly street light bill. So I saw one in here, it talked about decorative street lighting. So if you go to the Live Oak Street side of our park, we have that decorative street lighting over there. I don't know really how much street lighting it provides, but this looks nicer. And one of the ones I sent you had a paragraph or a section on decorative. If you wanted decorative street lighting, these were the standards. Or I don't know if you said, hey, you know what, we're not, unless you can prove to us that decorative street lighting is enough to provide the safety, public safety, traffic safety, and crime control. I don't think they really do. They look at the Live Oak Street. They did. I mean, they look nice for the park entrance, and they look nice. I guess going up to the community, something like that, right? Where you're not really lighting up. It's just kind of a decorative look. But I don't know if I'd want them on the streets.
How about the downtown part of Main Street?
I think that's like a district thing, you know, kind of separates, okay, I'm in the park, I'm in
Yeah.
Main Street sort of deal. That makes some slight
Okay.
decorative variations.
On Somerset?
No, Somerset.
Oh, in Somerset. Oh, they might.
Yeah, because I've been through there.
Okay. Let's see. Do me off there, sir. I think you're right. Been a while since I've been over there.
I mean, of course, this is street lights, but it's like, talking about the park, right, not to get too far off in the weeds on that. Because I know we've had some instances of vandalism at night, right, or throughout the day. I'm just thinking, well, if we have these really relatively dim lights, right, I mean, as far as protecting ourselves from security measures, I don't know what kind of
We have
video
several.
cameras or anything, game cameras.
So, okay, so that leads me, inside our park, we have several, they're older poles, they were a cheaper version of doing it. We upgraded the lighting years ago to what they are today. And they're 100 times better than what they used to be. But I think we could even replace that light head that we have now with LED versions and get even better lighting inside our park. And then, on top of that, install some security cameras every so often that are run off solar power and stuff like that. For instance, I mean, mine connects to my Wi-Fi at home, but I mean, I can pull up my camera in front of my house right now. It's run off solar and see it. Everything's stored locally on it. But there's so many options out there for security, you know, that I think we need to look at things over there.
That's the car workshop.
Yeah, sorry. That led me into that.
On private streets, where's that electricity coming from? Is it the owner's power head, or is it coming off the city?
If it's private, it'd be the owner. We're not gonna pay anything private at all, or, you know, anything in HOA. We're only gonna do it on public roadway.
The last item, if you could get it legal, because we mentioned HOA a lot, but they may have a more generic term. I want to include a generic term, maybe in definitions, but HOA is just in case that there's in the legality part, that there's something else that could cover that. Thanks.
And then on K2 on the very bottom, where it talks about the developer and or HOA shall be responsible for the installation costs and monthly operation costs associated with upgrading streetlights. So this is just for the upgrading, right? The upgraded portions of it.
Yeah, so we have a standard that says, hey, you know, we want a step above that. All of our residents want a little more like, you know, okay, great, you can upgrade them, but you have to pay all those costs.
So
They meet our minimums,
Yeah,
but they pay
And
for
we're okay
anything
with
above
it.
our minimum.
or they find a decorative light that provides the lighting that's required, and they want to make it look nice. I don't know.
So number 5, the very last one, pretty much covers the broad. HOA pays the utility company for the monthly street lighting bill.
Yeah, I put, on that one, because that one talked about, if you followed it was talking about,
See, one is the
I
upgrade to the existing standard. And the other one was upgrading the street lighting with the new development. What I'm saying is basically, can we put the monthly street light bill somewhere where it covers both?
I can add that as well.
See what I'm saying? In other words, it being under the existing standard light. I just said put it somewhere where it's very easy to,
Well, that's what I was getting at. I think if we could become more generic on the word, or the use of HOA, that should encompass all of it. Because, HOA, like you were saying earlier, Mayor, that needs to include gated communities. That used to be that, you know?
Well, that would be a price. So by state statute, you can check with Leo, as far as I knew, you cannot block a public street, period. So the second you want to put up a gate, you have two choices. One, accept all those as private streets and you become required to maintain them, or remove the fence. How do you want to move forward?
I mean, that's something to take up, because Park Place does have an HOA. And that's something that probably needs to be taken up with in the future. Because it is a gated community.
Yeah, you're
Because
gay,
our-
how do you want to move forward?
Because our city streets, correct me if I'm wrong, Lakeshore had a HOA. Those are city streets, right? There's no gate. Getting back to the lights, how are we going to say the lighting in Lakeshore? It's not.
It's none.
It's pretty minimal, right? There's
none.
There's none at all.
That's what I like about it.
I guess
All the
if-
light stuff.
if the city's gonna go out there and say, hey, well, you're not in conformance, y'all need to start dropping in light poles, how's that gonna affect?
See, I don't know if we want to make it mandatory. That's my thing. That's why.
this is where it says the HOA
Originally, I
asked for it.
took,
Yeah, so do we wanna, I guess, make sure that there's not,
well, that's why in the policy under A on the first page, it said the owner, developer, subdivider, and it originally said shall be required to install. And that's why I left may, or how do y'all, because if they come in, Lakeshore doesn't exist, but they come in tomorrow and say, we're gonna develop Lakeshore, and we have this policy, they have to put a street light if we use the word shall. Unless they get a variance from the council to not abide by this.
yeah,
But then it comes down to, if that's the case, it comes down to you pass an ordinance or a policy, but you're gonna issue a variance tomorrow anyway, so why even do it in the first place?
Well, with the amount of space that they have there, you would think you would become at some point lenient, say, we may not require you to have it at so many feet, but we do require you to have certain bulbs, certain luminous. The other requirements are still there.
I can tell you from experience, and once again, I lived there, so just throughout the years, they've gone and asked. It hasn't been recently, but when I first moved in, a few years after that, they were all asking, nobody wants streetlights on there. They don't. So I see the point where we have to be very careful about,
If you use the
Ask-
word shall, that's what's gonna kill you. Then they're required to, so that's what I said, they may be
You
required.
use words like,
Because then you're
developers
forcing-
may choose to.
you're forcing the HOA to now assume a financial responsibility to pay for the lights.
Right.
When they don't want.
I mean, this talks, of course, about new development, right?
New development, yeah.
New
I think that's the
development.
key word.
And so I think you need something too, though, for existing development, so in the event in the future, the HOA, they say, well, we do want lighting, and then that way there's,
And that covers that, they're an HOA and they're requesting streetlights, that'd be covered in this policy, here's the standard.
I mean, I don't see why they would do it at this point in time, but I guess also since it's city streets, that they would be subject to conforming
Yeah.
to pay every whatever, 300 or 600 feet that they gotta drop in light. And personally, I mean, I wouldn't like that, right? I got the lights that I do out there. I'm not gonna come before the council at any point in time. I promise y'all, I'm not gonna say,
We're recording, sir.
yeah, get it on record that I want these light poles on. I like it dark. I would prefer just pitch blackness, but I know a lot of people, they don't feel that way. They
Yeah.
feel that comfort, right? And, kind of how Dave was talking about public safety, they're out walking in the street. But I like it just dark skies, man.
Yeah.
So,
Like I said, it was real nice during Christmas.
Yeah.
Nice Christmas lights.
So we can leave it the way it is on that, the owner, developer, subdivider, shall require streetlights,
Just talk to legal on
new
where it
owner,
gives us
something like that,
flexibility.
where we're saying, hey, if you're existing, we're not changing anything on you, unless you come in and trigger something in here, because you're doing a big project, right?
Are you requested?
Yeah, if you request it, you're already covered, but as long as you don't touch anything, kind of like, the building, if you come in and you're not gonna rehab your whole building, you're fine.
Well, I
You
guess-
just wanna fix the light, but if you come in and say, I'm gonna redesign the whole building, oh, and it was built in 1955, well, guess what? Now we have new codes and you have to conform.
I guess the only thing about, being grandfathered in, they just go and ask for one light, hey, we want one light out on Lake Shore, it's gonna, no, it's, once you get the one light, then you gotta get the whole.
But even then, the HOA is gonna have to take responsibility.
Yeah, they're gonna have to take responsibility, but I guess if they just want the one light, we're not gonna allow one light, it's gonna know, now the whole neighborhood.
This is our design, and the good news is, in the HOA, so Joe Bob comes and says, I want streetlights, and we don't have any, I want streetlights, we're like, great. You're in an HOA, so here's how the process works, we'll give you the petition, you've gotta go out and gather 70% of the signatures from everybody, but you're also gonna have to get the HOA in here and say, we will accept all those costs. Because if the HOA says no, and the 70% of people say yes, that's a conversation they need to have with their elected board at the HOA. And then once you get all that worked out, come back to us and we can proceed forward.
That's why I asked if we could take a look at Saddle Ridge, and they're already putting lights in.
On their design standards.
Yeah,
and-
we could
and-
follow their, maybe by their example.
Okay.
As long as they're within that ordinance or the governing body that's stated in this.
Yeah. I would imagine that's probably the standard you're all gonna.
Yeah.
They have an HOA out there,
Yes.
and
All-
Rosewood's gonna have an HOA.
Yes, and I talked to, and Lytle Farm, yeah, and I talked
Part of the
to
PID.
the Saddle Ridge and the Rosewood. They've never come to the city and asked for anything from us saying, yeah, CPS install the streetlights as part of the development and send the bill to Lytle. They said, no, we're just paying them as part of the development process.
Isn't there something in the PID for a lot of farms about decorative lighting? Like, isn't that part of the PID? Like, so they can have like fancier light poles out there.
Yeah, I have to go back and redo that whole PID. We're still finding a company to do the
And
review.
I don't know if that needs to be included in here at all about,
That's, I guess that's what we need to
that's
do.
subject to a PID, or they fall under a different.
Allow decorative street lighting. But
I mean, they're paying
Yeah,
for it.
because
I have no
that's-
issue if they wanna have fancy poles.
Our only concern would be the spacing that would match our.
the spacing and the standard that they still, well, I guess it doesn't matter because it's an HOA, they're paying for the light, right? We're not providing, then it's not necessarily a street light, it's a private, could be a private security light. It's
I will-
decorative for their
I can't talk about Rosewood because we have not, but I know that Saddle Ridge did go and talk to CPS. I can tell you that. They were part of the discussions when they were trying to figure out what they wanted to do. So, and I think because of that coordination, they actually put something nice over there.
So does that go back to the American National Standard for roadway lighting?
I'm sure they probably got some kind of decorative lighting that meets a standard in there. I'll go back and research it, but I would imagine they do.
All these developers, I mean, especially, I don't know who the third one is coming, but all the other ones are developing inside of Bear County, so they already know how to lay things down. Because they're being under the CPS umbrella, so
The third one in Rosewood? Or the third one out of Farm?
the third one in Vital Farms. I don't think we've gotten the developer, have we gotten the?
I don't know who the builders are gonna be
Yeah, the
yet,
builders.
as far as the
The
homes.
last thing I saw was the same people who did Lucky Ranch over off 90. The Rosewood.
Yeah, that's LGI homes, yeah, we know that's LGI homes.
LGI,
But for
LGI.
Lytle Farms, I don't know who
We don't
their
have-
national builders are gonna be, 1, 2 million, I don't know. They're talking about like a couple maybe national builders, I don't really know.
So let me quickly touch the subject one more time. So subdivisions coming in, new subdivisions, the city buy-in, acceptance, right? Acceptance for that subdivision, lighting and everything in there. But what about the newly installed ones? Are we gonna have permits? Are we gonna have inspector or an inspection done?
That's all probably falls under the CPS umbrella when they install, the CPS installing
They
them,
have their own.
they're gonna have their own inspection people. We would now use our engineer, hey, we got a policy, when subdivisions come in, we have a street lighting policy, so when you're reviewing all of that, you need to make sure they're conforming to our street lighting
Okay.
policy as well. But as far as the installation of it, that's gonna be CPS,
As long as that's a given.
Yeah.
That's part of the city requirement.
Yeah.
Okay.
they would do that. So a subdivision comes in and says, hey, we're gonna build this subdivision. no HOA, no nothing. That's we're gonna be on the hook for those streetlights possibly, because that'd be a city street, no HOA, when we're done, we're just walking away, kind of thing. It's something to think about. But we can, I guess, cross that bridge when we get there.
And there's coordination, so we've had here in the last couple of years, we had sections of the city as, it used to be, Tom Zoom, as they were building up with some of the places and they needed to put additional utility posts. They had to coordinate through CPS because they were kind of like the keeper of the utility poles in this area. So there's some coordination among themselves. Even how much they can put on a utility pole. So, which is one of the reasons why we're still waiting for our connection over at the community center.
I mean, the good thing with this that we've worked on tonight as far as this policy is concerned, it puts the cost on the HOA. And a majority of, I just look at that stat, 67% of newly completed homes are part of an HOA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, moving forward, I don't really see, there's not a whole lot of land, right, that's gonna be like 10, 20 homes. Like, we talk about Wisdom Road, maybe,
Yeah.
some smaller communities, but
I don't think we've got the
I'm worried about the
land.
cost for us.
I don't think we're gonna have the land to do the next Sour Ridges and Rosewood.
Talking about costs, do we have the numbers of what the costs are?
So Lynette talked today, she told me we were at, we're about 20,000 so far for the year, so we'll be roughly 40-ish, 45 for street lighting that we pay a year. I think we budgeted, I must spend more time.
Is that the, you're talking about the electric bill?
Yeah, the electric bill monthly, that is just,
What did you say for, what we budgeted for last year, or for this year?
I think it was 50,000, 53,000, I'd go at 58, something like that.
So we're getting close to it.
Yeah, so we're at 20 so far for the year, so if we double that, we're 40.
So these are the actual ones we're responsible
That's what
for.
Lynette has produced us on street lighting that we're responsible for. Still trying to figure out where all those lights are, that's gonna be another feat, because you can see they come in just different names, different. I would love to have, I don't know if it's possible.
Did we ever get the list from CPS and from,
I've got a corner them and work with them on street lights, and it may be something where I come in, I know when I worked, at PD at night, I drove around every city street and every single street light to do an inventory, okay, just like that. So it doesn't take long, I mean.
well, CPS has all the numbers and has everything. I can tell you that it's,
They do, but if I'm waiting for them to provide it, I could probably do it quicker one night just by driving the streets when I'm by myself and just, hey, there's a street light here at this intersection or at this address, and know every street light, and then I can take that and say, okay, CPS, here's my known street lights that I have. Tell me which one of those, or AP, which one of those are we paying for that you show? Or tell me who's AP or?
yes, it's Reliant. It's listed as Reliant. They changed their names.
Oh,
They change it, so when you get south of there, you can buy through Reliant, through AEP, or there's a third one, but they ultimately all run through AEP. So I'll give you what your bill through, it's weird.
Still be interesting though, just to get the number. So I'm surprised they can't run it, honestly. I've been on their system with one of their CPS techs, and I tell you, it's like pinpoint GPS coordinates, everything. Here's the pole. Whenever we had the power outages, I mean, it
can be difficult at times to make a request, you have to wait. For instance, the location that I was supposed to get power turned back on, I finally got to today. I got this big long thing that we have to fill out and all this power stuff that CPS has had before. To turn the power back on, we sent it to the person that did the job, and they said, well, they already turned the power back on, what are you talking about? So, no, you know. So it's, sometimes we chase our tail at times, because it's just such a large organization, they're not just answering to us, they're answering for all kinds of people, and those requests are coming in. What's important to us may not be as important to them. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's just quicker to just say, let me just walk and drive it. I mean, I can do it during the day, but I wouldn't be able to get a good inventory if that light was working or not. And I think that's where I want to come back to and get a light inventory, working, not working, Because I know under the AEP contract, if the light is out and it is a failure of the light head, not just the photo cell or the light bulb, they actually replace it with a full LED version for free. But if we say, hey, we want an LED light, that's an upgraded cost that we have to pay.
So we just need to wait until light, because it burns out and maybe replace it for free.
Well, it has to fail. If it burn, I can say if the
I mean,
light's out,
I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
if they come out, yeah, if it fails, hey, it's out, I need it fixed. They come out and they determine the light head failed, then we get an LED version. But if they said it was a light bulb, then we get any bulb for the same of what we had.
Or like David just said right earlier, that how Biden's gonna require LEDs for
Everywhere.
everywhere.
He is going to outlaw anything but LEDs.
Yeah, and then I think there's gonna be like, they're gonna replace them out in phases. But yeah, they're gonna,
Golly, that's
Well,
crazy.
that's the point. If there's
How did that bulb, how did that bulb hurt him? That's what I wanna know. How did the incandescent bulb hurt Biden?
I will say this, we got plenty of big birds that go over to our water tower.
yeah, we need to fix some
Light up some of those
We
lights.
could rehome some buzzards if anybody
Hey,
wants to
don't
adopt a
worry,
buzzard.
they will go down real quick.
Hey,
So.
there was a dead tree back there behind the library, right, that they roosted, right?
The buzzards as well.
The buzzards are in that tree.
Jeez, I thought they only.
And
roosted on the
well,
tower.
last week, they got in one of my trees. Of course, the dog got out there and was going crazy, and they were struggling to like get out of actual, they
You
were
got it.
breaking limbs, and everyone was like, get out of.
Don't let them roost.
Yeah.
So all the details I already, I was trying to scare them off our water tower, and, by shooting fireworks every day. Every time they roosted, boom, shoot fireworks. But you gotta do that for 3 weeks in a row, and then eventually they go roost somewhere else. Didn't work. They'd fly off for, 45 minutes, roost again, and just after 3 weeks, and God knows, yeah, it was fun to shoot fireworks.
No.
After how many Roman candles, and I was like, oh, no. Okay, just live here.
Now we have the grackles again.
Oh, yeah,
They're noisy.
the grackles, the
The
HEB, you see, they'll kill the trees,
evening.
HEB. Some of those are dead because of all those grackles.
All right.
I'll make these corrections, work on it, maybe then send it to our engineer and the power companies, get their wording, kind of pray, hey, this makes sense, that doesn't make sense, and then get as best the final document as possible, send that back out to everybody individually. You can make whatever else, send that to me individually, so we don't violate open meetings, and then once I have close to finals we can get, then we'll send it to legal for review, so we only pay for legal ones.
Any last minute? Anything at all? I think it's a workshop. We don't need a motion to conclude, so go ahead and say 7:46. Go ahead and show we're closing down the workshop. Thank you so much. It was really good. Matt, thank you for the extra time putting this stuff together. Please thank Lynette for the